This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 9th GRN webinar, the GRB View. I'm delighted to welcome lots of our members along today. We've got companies from different sizes, some very well-known companies who've booked in, plus a lot of new members that have come along today to hear this webinar. So I thought I'd start off with a brief introduction just for those people who are new to our webinar series. So my name's Dan Hawes and I'm the co-founder of GRB. Now, Graduate Recruitment Bureau are the go-to platform for high caliber university students, graduates and recruiters. We were established back in 1997 by two graduates, myself and Chris Cater, and we have over 65 staff, and we've worked with over 1,800 clients during that time. All sectors covered, some very well-known firms like Post Office, IBM, Unilever and Ocado, to name but a few, but also some of these fast-growing SMEs, companies that need high-caliber graduate talent, but they struggle. So they use us and our recruitment experts to find them high-caliber students and graduates. We've actually managed to launch the careers for over 8,000 graduates, all starting full-time graduate level jobs with our clients all over the UK and also other parts of the world. Now, GRN. This was set up by GRB back in January 2009. This was originally for our clients, but also for friends. And the aim was generally to bring together HR advisors, HR business partners, recruitment directors and talent leads to discuss current topics presented by a mix of relevant and influential speakers. The emphasis generally is on members to share best practice in a confidential environment, enhance your learning and ultimately help you become better graduate recruiters. Now, our membership recently hit 2,776 members, which is brilliant. A massive increase in the last 3 months, with a lot of members working from home. They're engaging a lot more on the forum and also in our webinars. So our membership has gone up lately. So we're currently on 2,776 members. As I say, a real mixture of companies are represented, FTSE 100 firms, but also fast-growing SME recruiters, covering the entire spectrum of different industry sectors. So it makes for a very varied audience and a very good peer group for members to learn from each other. Now, what we've tried to do over the 10 years or so we've been going is bring members together. Now, what we used to do is run masterclass events in London at the Institute of Chartered Accounting, England and Wales. We would have speakers come along and we'd fill a lecture room, and that continued up until March of this year, and then we were forced to look for alternatives. So now we've decided to flip over to running these events in a webinar format on a much more frequent basis as well. So demand has been very high, with a lot of engagement, and our webinars will be recorded, by the way, and also put on our YouTube channel. Not only that, we have a very active forum on LinkedIn, which all members have access to. They can post questions, they can share information they get, and also speak to our presenters at the end of every event. We also have a blog on our website, graduaterecruitersnetwork.co.uk. We run monthly surveys, also podcasts from time to time, and we have a quarterly newsletter that gives you a roundup of the latest inside information in the world of graduate recruitment. So there's an overview for some of our new members about what GRN is all about. So today we are going to be having a conversation with members from the Graduate Recruitment Bureau team. We have Jenny Austin, who's a director here in our GRS division, and I'll get her to explain a little bit more in a second. Then we have Danielle Buckland, who's a graduate recruitment specialist here. And also we have Owen Gill, who's a manager. So these three colleagues work in different sectors. They've been working with different companies, different graduates, and their viewpoint over the last 3 to 4 months, I hope, will be very interesting for our audience today. Now, if you do have any questions, please do use the chat facility. I'll be monitoring the questions, and at the end, there'll be an opportunity to put these to our panelists. So if you do have any questions at any time, put them in the chat facility and I will ask them on your behalf. So I would like to introduce our first panelist, Jenny Austin. Jenny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I am Jenny Austin. As Dan said, I'm the director of our RPO division, GRS. So I've worked for GRB now for, well, recently about 4 more years, and basically, running the RPO division. So we support volume recruiters with anything from attraction campaigns, just screening support through to kind of full RPO, but also run bespoke projects as well. So things like designing online testing, doing kind of digital assessment centres and stuff. So there's been loads of stuff going on. I have also worked in internal recruitment a number of times. So I've worked for Intel, part of British Airways. So I've kind of done a mix of, what you guys have all done in sort of heads of talents and internal graduate recruitment roles and agency side. So yeah, that's what I do here at GRB.
Perfect, thank you, Jenny. Danielle.
Hello, everybody. I'm Danielle Buckland. I head up one of the contingency recruitment teams at GRB. I started as a graduate, going into graduate recruitment, and have been with the GRB for over 9 years. So have quite a lot of experience working with a variety of organisations, from FTSE 10 through to startups, SMEs, such a broad variety. The roles we typically recruit for, again, are more of the contingency style recruitment processes, although we do work in conjunction with our other departments, such as GRS that Jenny just mentioned. But yeah, we do everything from analytics through to supply chain, management, operations, PR, conference production and events. And we have specialists on my team that also do digital recruitment. So we try and cover a bit of everything that we consider commercial, or commercial functions within a business. But yeah, so been with the company 9 years, and yeah, have a team of 6 that cover the UK as a whole.
Marvellous, thank you, Danielle. Owen, could you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending. So my name's Owen. I've been with GRB since 2006. So I've already written out one economic crash already. My role is a managing consultant, which means I'm a recruiter, but I also manage a small team of other recruiters. There's 6 of us. We specialise in placing graduates into mainly target-driven sales and recruitment consulting careers. Typical sectors within sales would be areas such as tech, cybersecurity, consumer goods, anything to do with facilities management, business services, that kind of thing. And from a recruitment perspective, we work with small to medium-sized contingency recruiters and executive search firms, typically who are themselves niche players in the market. We have had a pretty tough few weeks in graduate recruitment, but we are starting to see a few green shoots and a bit more business coming our way.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So if we kick off with our first question, I'm going to put this to Jenny, first of all. How has lockdown been for you personally?
Oh, good question. It's been a funny year, hasn't it? I think everyone can probably agree with that. Do you know what? Not so bad, which is actually nice to be a little bit positive. But yeah, it was definitely, I think, a little bit unusual at first, just getting used to it. And I definitely think with, work, especially for me, with the kind of big volume campaigns and the time of year that it happened as well was kind of it's just been really strange. Everything sort of went on hold and kind of delayed everything work-wise, I guess, which was it was quite a lot to get used to, which I think for everyone in recruitment, it's kind of meant, rather than it being so seasonal, has probably been an all-year job. So we kind of haven't had that break that we maybe usually have over the summer with stuff. But yeah, no, all good. I haven't gone too mad, stuck at home on my own with my cat. As you can see, back in the office now. I think Owen is upstairs, so we're all a bit spread out. So yeah, it's quite nice to you know, be back in and see kind of faces and actually, you know, kind of get that team working element going again. And actually, yeah, it's nice to definitely see some of the work. Like Owen says, it's starting to move again now and change a bit. But yeah, it's been weird, Dan.
Good, good. Yeah, it's been a long time and nice to have you in the office today, Jenny. Danielle, how has it been for you personally? It seems like you're working from home at the moment.
Yeah, very much so. Again, I quite echo what Jenny said. It has been a very, very strange and unusual year. We started off the year doing very, very well in our team, and you know, great projections for 2020. I think by the end of March, things were starting to sort of hold up a little bit with recruitment, but yeah, it's nice to be back. I was furloughed for I think 5 or 6 weeks, so naturally that's slightly worrying. You know, what's going to happen with the graduate market? How's that going to go? And I think a lot of people have been in a similar situation, not just in recruitment, but you know, all over the country in any manner of different jobs. So that was a bit strange, I have to say, being at home for a while and not doing my job. But luckily, I came back about 7 weeks ago now. Yeah, it's really, I've seen a really clear difference between this kind of the last few weeks compared to 6 or 7 weeks ago. Things have picked up a lot, and it's starting to feel a lot more like normal work at the moment. But yeah, it's picking up. It's not where it was, obviously, but it's nice to be back. It's nice to be supporting some of our clients again. And it's great to be back in the office a little bit. Today I am working from home as we have our GRB bubbles at the moment. So that's why Jenny and Owen are in the office. But yeah, nice to see some of my team. Nice to sort of get back to supporting clients.
Great, thank you, Danielle. So Owen, how's lockdown been for you personally?
As you know, I've been working the whole time. Bit rather frustrating because we love to be really busy here, and there's been enough business to sort of keep us ticking over and working. But quite frustrating that we can't get our teeth stuck into lots of major projects until they get the green lights, which might be later on in the year. I've been working from home. I'm only in the office today really because I've got a 14-month-old daughter, and I don't really want her to be in the background with a bunch of recruiters screaming her head off. So hence the reason I'm in the office today. I personally found it a bit of a blessing. I'm sure a lot of people have, those with families or friends or living with elderly. Of course, it's very tinged with lots of sadness because it's the world health has taken a hit. But whenever are you going to have the chance again to you know, spend time at home and work from home and enjoy what was pretty amazing weather early in the year as well. But very happy that things are starting to pick up. We're going to see a sense of some kind of normality, as I'm sure the other employers are also starting to see as well. Personally looking forward to things hopefully getting a bit busier.
Good, good. Sounds great. Thank you, everyone. As you've said, we've got GRB bubbles, so some of you are working at home for a few days and some of you in the office. So we've made sure the office here is COVID secure, and we're gradually bringing people back in to try and get full occupancy before the end of the year. Hopefully without a second wave putting us back, but we'll see. But we're far better prepared this time, and I think mentally we're all in a stronger position, from judging from the conversations we're starting to have with other recruiters, which is what I'd like to touch on now. And if we start with you, Jenny, because your projects are very different to Danielle's and Owen's, in that you do outsource projects that last, you know, a set period of time. So if you could just explain some of the conversations you've been having with your clients, if you could illustrate, you know, the nature of the sector they're in, and what they've been asking you to do for them, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think probably one of the biggest trends that I've seen, which I'm sure everyone on the call can probably agree with, is I think it's that huge element of uncertainty. And, you know, I definitely would say at the moment, a lot of it's been that, well, I guess kind of around February, March time, the kind of bigger recruiters would have sorted all of their attraction campaigns. You know, they'd almost be starting to think about, okay, what are our assessment design going to be like for next year? That kind of everything's usually ahead of the curve. And I think something that's really echoed this whole way through lockdown is that uncertainty around what is it going to look like. And I think everyone's kind of looking to each other for answers and no one really knows. So, I mean, that's definitely across the board with all sectors. I think one interesting thing that, you know, a few people have suggested is should sectors maybe be working together a little bit more generally, is actually, you know, I think in this time, rather than us all, you know, maybe kind of each to their own a little bit, actually working together that bit more to kind of help each other out, because I think everyone is just quite uncertain. And I think a lot of recruiters as well, we forget that, I think in grad roles that people are quite siloed sometimes. You know, they don't always necessarily have huge teams that people presume. So I think that's definitely been something that's kind of been throughout. The other element, I guess, that's been a trend for us is that most of the campaigns that we would work on, so like you say, Dan, so for my division, it is more those bigger campaigns, but I work across all sectors in the UK and work across any location in the UK as well. So be that from small SMEs right up to, you know, like we're supporting some stuff with like Tesco, you know, National Audit Office, Post Office, so some, you know, really big organisations, is everything just kind of went on hold, which is dragged out. So assessment centres, if you were one of the recruiters still doing stuff in March, is actually that kind of went on hold and paused, and it wasn't like we had a plan of, okay, well, we're definitely still going to do them in June or July. It was kind of a, we're going to need to pause it and now think. So I think there were also those concerns around candidate engagement, candidate experience, you know, what does that now look like for them? Because that's really changed, and those sort of considerations throughout. So yeah, I think for me, that's probably the kind of key takeaway, is actually everyone being in the same position and probably thinking that everyone else is really clued up with what their plan is. And I actually don't think I've spoken to one person yet that's really sure about what they're going to do for next year. So I guess even volumes as well, Dan. Actually, that's, I imagine, saying like Owen and Danielle will probably echo, is the volumes of recruitment. I haven't necessarily from the bigger campaigns seen them saying we're not going to do it at all next year. So from the kind of economic element, you know, there's not a huge concern there, but I would say that numbers don't seem to have increased. You know, they're going to stay sort of fairly stagnant for a year. So, I mean, yeah, there's tons that I could talk about for hours, but I'll try not to bore you all too much. But I think, yeah, there is that takeaway that no matter, even to be honest, what sector we're in, is probably working together a little bit more about what is working for you, what, you know, what can we do to maybe support that graduate intake at the moment with, you know, their careers moving forwards as well, and just getting a bit more certainty from each other.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, you know, the government is saying we're all in this together. And maybe companies are starting to think, well, if we collaborate our resources, we can get through this ourselves. So that's interesting. And I know you've been speaking to a few organisations in the building sector that are starting to think along these lines. Yeah. And also the candidate experience, super important at any time, but even more so now that we can't actually see candidates face to face. So, you know, how's the experience going to be for them, and what are companies doing when they're virtualizing every step of their recruitment process to make sure that graduates are engaged and that there's they're still getting the same feeling they would if they stepped into the office and met people and those kind of things and absorbed the culture. It's very hard to get across remotely sometimes. So that's been a challenge as well. So that's interesting that you mentioned that as well.
I was going to say with the digital element, definitely, I think from a candidate perspective is, well, I guess two things. Actually, sometimes we'd be surprised at how easily and how quickly candidates actually pick up, you know, things like digital assessment centres and digital journeys generally. I think they're quite used to that world. But yeah, there is that piece around, okay, well, what do we do next year to educate candidates around, you know, how is that going to look, and you know, what are we going to put them through? Because I think they are just as unsure as us, and just it's the unknown. And I think 99% of the time, once they go through a process, actually there's nothing that many people have come out of and gone, that's, you know, so unusual, or like I've got a terrible feel for the company. It's more the unknown beforehand that I think probably all internal recruiters need to think about, is just, you know, when we are inviting candidates to stages in the process, what else can we be sharing with them to make sure candidates are really prepared for what that looks like. I've seen, you know, some companies do different things, so like, you know, recorded demonstrations of their platforms for assessment centres that they can share with candidates beforehand, or kind of, I know we're running some virtual drop-in sessions for some clients where candidates can literally just a Q&A ask me, you know, what's it going to look like, what am I being put through? So there are actually some fairly easy fixes even for the big volume recruiters to help that candidate experience and candidate engagement. And it's almost, don't overthink it and over worry about it, because I have seen some employers again think, oh, do you know what, we're just not going to do it at all because the candidates are going to have a bad experience, my assessors will be confused. And actually, do you know, I haven't seen one yet go terribly wrong with anything that, you know, we really needed to worry about. So I think it is just, it's an education piece, and I think it is just the unknown. You know, same with assessors and that internal piece as well, is it's just allowing people that opportunity to probably ask more questions than they usually would. But yeah, definitely, Dan, I think it's been quite interesting, that candidate engagement piece, and they've picked it up fairly quickly, candidates.
Yeah, and also it's made it a lot easier for very senior people, even CEOs, to quickly drop in on a video call. You know, when, you know, they're super busy and they might not be able to timetable something, a 10-minute video call is doable anywhere now. So even the most senior people can get involved, which I think is brilliant, which may not have happened beforehand. Danielle, perhaps you can explain a little bit about some of the clients you've been working for, what they've been asking you to do, and some of the challenges you've overcome.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a real mixed bag, I have to say. Yeah, I think engagement has been one key question for my clients. Yeah, due to the wide variety of clients we work with, there's been a lot of different approaches to their recruitment, if they're doing it at all over the last couple of months. But I think now it is very much about how can we move forward, how can we adapt, how can we do the best for the candidate and engage the candidate, as well as finding the right person for us without necessarily meeting them and doing it all remotely. So in terms of the types of companies, interestingly, we already worked with some organisations that have, you know, adapted very much so to interviewing in the digital world already before even, you know, before COVID-19. And some of our, you know, big clients that we work with have always done their interviews remotely via Skype or, you know, Teams, things like that. So in some respects, they weren't even hit by this situation because they were already doing it. And they will continue to do that. Of course, I think every single client out there has, well, in terms of my space, at least paused recruitment for a little while, but some very much sort of still going with the volume that they were before lockdown, which is very good. So those are some types of businesses. Equally, I think I've seen quite a lot of market research companies, digital agencies, communications agencies, be looking for new staff. And it's quite interesting because a lot of people have asked me, has this industry been hit or is that industry been hit? And certainly some industries are going to have a bigger hit naturally because of the situation. That being said, we do have clients that are still going full steam ahead, doing really well, adapting to the situation. So in my experience, it's not necessarily industries that have been hit with graduate recruitment issues. It's more individual companies. And you know, I think that's kind of natural in some respects. In terms of what they've been asking us to do differently, unsurprisingly, a lot of interviews and assessment centres are now digital and remote. And each individual company is having to adapt to the technology they have in-house that they can use, and also just how comfortable they are doing it. So I spoke to a startup company yesterday, 4 of them in the business, and they really want to hire another graduate. But for them, they really do have questions about hiring somebody without having met them. And I think that is a bigger concern for the smaller agencies rather than the bigger companies that have established processes that have gone very well. But I think every company I've worked with over the last sort of 2-3 months has done digital interviews. Platforms such as Teams has worked really well, especially with sort of if you need to offer sort of a task, perhaps at a second stage interview. They've worked really well so that candidates can do the task but also ask questions during the time. So yeah, that's been fantastic. But yeah, I think just advising clients to see their candidates more on video interviews, and sort of try and build that rapport digitally, I think has been really beneficial, so that when you get to the end of a recruitment process, both the candidate and the company feel very engaged together, and sort of feel confident and comfortable to extend an offer to that candidate without having met them. So that's certainly something that we've been seeing, although I'm sure with government guidelines we will we'll see more companies meet with their candidates perhaps after the recruitment process before before actually joining the business. Another aspect as well that I would say has been working really well for us with companies that have a higher volume has been the digital assessment centres. So there's several different platforms for those. Our GRN team, obviously, GRS team do support some companies with those, but where possible, they have worked absolutely fantastically. So a company can visualize those candidates and have all of the tasks of the day set out there. And it's a lot easier than Teams or Zoom or Skype if you have, I would say, more than 2 or 3 candidates that you're looking to interview. So that's been brilliant. But yeah, I think it's just adapting to the situation and being confident to hire those graduates. Most graduates that I'm working with are very, very happy to start working remotely, and most appreciate the fact that they are going to have to start out, perhaps 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week at home, and then gradually move back into the office when it's appropriate. So yeah, in my experience, graduates are very adaptable and seem to be sort of jumping at these new technologies and ways to interview.
Interesting. Okay, that's good. Similar story there with you. Companies are adapting. They're switching over to remote interviewing. If they weren't before, they found it relatively easy to do that. But also the onboarding thing, which is one of the big issues, actually getting someone started. They seem to have overcome that by training or managing them remotely. So that's good. Owen, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your clients, because again, this is a different area, and they may have different requirements. So could you share your experience, please?
Sure. Well, it's been 4 months, hasn't it, since we went into lockdown. I think we all got pretty carried away at the beginning about, well, that's fine. Everyone could just do a Zoom and do remote interviewing. And I think what I learned as a recruiter was patience was pretty important. We're speaking to businesses who have all of a sudden sent hundreds of staff home and are themselves trying to work out how they're going to operate successfully, and probably didn't need recruiters like me banging the door down and saying, that's all right, just do a video and you're good to go. I think what we've had to learn is a bit of patience and understanding with organisations, and offer advice on how they can set these digital assessment days or interview dates up, how they can run it in a way that's engaging and attractive to candidates. I have to say that, conversely, a little bit to Danielle, I have found that certainly if we talk to clients over the course of March, April and May at least, we found there was a lot of appetite still to hire, a lot of appetite still to do digital interviewing, but perhaps far less confidence around the onboarding piece. For whatever reason, I suspect, people with limited experience, how do you integrate them into a team that knows what they're doing? How do you provide tools which you normally would do in a classroom? Just a simple matter of how do you get a young person who's never worked in an office environment before to slot in and do all those sort of small things that we take for granted as professional. So we've had a bit of pushback actually on the remote onboarding. It's I think now that offices are starting to open up again, and we're talking of the 2 to 3 day working week, we have found some certainly smaller scale ups and startups who are saying, well, look, now we can get somebody physically into an office, we can look at the onboarding, because we'll do 2 days of heavy classroom training, product training, etc. And the other 3 days where they might be doing phone training or meeting training, that can be done digitally. So we're certainly not, no, the answers haven't all been given for sure. And I can understand, people of my generation and generation above me having to think about completely adapting their sort of working ways in order to take on a young graduate. So yeah, when we were speaking to businesses back in April, what we were not finding was organisations who'd washed their hands of this. We still saw lots and lots of appetite, but just a hesitancy around, we still want to hire graduates, we still want to build our early talent teams, we still want future leaders in the business, but just a bit of an unease about how to do that. From a graduate perspective, I spoke to quite a few people in the last 2 weeks around giving them advice on assessment days using MS Teams. And actually, what I've found is that so many of these graduates, the 2020 cohort anyway, they spent the last 4 or 5 months learning at university via Teams or other digital platforms. So quite a lot of them are actually very comfortable with the idea of a digital interview or a digital assessment day, even digital working. So I think we've just got to get those meeting of minds really, to make sure that employers are not just comfortable with offering an onboarding solution remotely, but can do it in a way which means that the retention of graduates is going to be as high as it would be normally. In terms of sectors, I know you asked the question to Dee. I think as recruiters, we were all chasing, back in April when business was hit, we were all having those discussions around, okay, so what markets are hot? Where can we go now? What's the next big thing? And I think what we learned was there's certain trends, of course, any suppliers to grocery retail, of course, we're actually doing really well back in April and have now leveled off. We found opportunities with the startups and the scale-ups, those that have perhaps got low overhead, or had seed investment to grow regardless of COVID. Cybersecurity firms that almost don't even need to have an office in order to do their job. We saw suppliers to the medical world, such as contract cleaning, contract catering, recruitment software platforms. The recruitment industry as a whole has certainly shrunk in the short term. We have seen businesses, tech recruiters, automotive recruiters, life sciences recruiters, sort of steadying the waters a little bit. But pretty much every business that I've had any vacancies with in the last 2 or 3 months, though, have offered digital as the entire process, or at least part of. And I don't think that will change too much going forward, even when we're all back in offices. I think that there's so many benefits, lack of travel, lack of expenses. As you mentioned, Dan, you can get a bunch of people in from an organisation who would normally not be available because of being at various other meetings. So I don't think we're going to see a complete shift from some of the traditional recruitment methods, but certainly those businesses that will be adaptable and open to adopting new ideas will probably find themselves at the front of where the graduate talent is.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because the pace of the pandemic has been so fast. Companies who've been agile and fleet of foot have been able to navigate their way through. And arguably, you could say these are the smaller firms who can afford to do that. But there are some other bigger firms where normally it takes years to steer them round, have come up with some very innovative and creative ways to get through this and remain agile. I think that's the overarching theme for a lot of client interaction that you've had. They've adapted, they've restructured, but by and large, they're still recruiting. No one has said they're going to stop graduate recruitment. We've heard companies revoking offers, of course, but I think 9 times out of 10 companies have stuck with their original programs for this year at least, and we'll see how 2021 pans out. We'll come on to your projections for the future in a while. I'd now like to move on to some of the candidates that you've been speaking to. I head up the marketing team, so we've noticed a huge uptick in numbers of graduates registering. Obviously, they're registering on our website, sending us their CV, in thousands and thousands of people. So we can't place all of them, but what we are able to do, obviously, match them with employment opportunities. But what has been key is offering them a lot of reassurance at this time. They're anxious about a lot of things as they make this first huge step into their first job. So this has turned everything upside down. So we're offering a lot of reassurance at the moment and guidance, particularly when it comes to online assessments, which for some are very daunting. But I'm interested to know, starting with you, Jenny, some of the conversations you've been having with candidates, has anything changed, or is it business as normal?
There's definitely been some changes. To be honest, it's more business as normal than I would have expected, which I think is something, even just a good takeaway for internal recruiters, is sometimes there is a huge concern over what candidates would feel or how they're going to feel about using digital assessments. And actually, I think, like you say, they're so used to it at the moment. A lot of them have actually been working at university doing their studies through it, and they've been chatting to their friends on Zoom and Teams and like all the different apps that you can, that actually they've kind of adapted probably a lot quicker than we think. I think applications, I've definitely seen an increase. I know some of our, I guess sort of slightly going back to the last question around sector, I think for me, we have had a huge spike in public sector recruitment. It's obviously a very secure sector to be in at the moment. And I think one of the things from candidates is they are applying to a lot of places at the moment, and they're applying more to, I think, broader sectors, and there are less opportunities. So I think a lot of employers are actually seeing increases in applications. And finally, I think, the reassurance piece. I know when we ran digital assessment centres, we've run them for EDF recently for all of their graduate programmes. They're the post office ones that we did. We're actually going to be doing some for next year, which I know you said we'll probably talk about in a bit for 2021. But I think it's the reassurance piece with candidates, and that's all it takes. But, is that any different to potentially what we were doing before with reassuring them how to go to a usual assessment centre? No, it's probably just adding an additional piece to it about, what does a digital setting look like versus doing it face to face? What extra bits do they need to be considering, and what does the tech look like? I would say that's probably the key things. it's often just, I don't, you know, how to navigate around a page, or where am I supposed to click, and it's nothing complicated. And I think sometimes in the room here is, I think everyone probably does feel quite alone of how to approach that. And actually, I think we should be using each other a bit more with those approaches. You know, we've seen it work incredibly well for a lot of our clients, and they're big volume recruiters, some of those. And the candidates, I think, yeah, they just look for that reassurance. And I get approached sometimes with the question of, you know, will we recruit thousands? If they're the big recruiters, you know, how are we supposed to speak to obviously thousands of students at once? You know, you don't need to. Sometimes it's just doing better invites over email, you know, adding that additional detail, or doing, like I say, kind of big drop-in sessions. So you only host maybe 3 or 4 hour-long sessions, but you allow candidates to come along to it. So it's not doing it, you know, one-on-one or anything like that. But yeah, I think people will be surprised. Owen's right, there's a lot of hesitancy sometimes, and actually it's just stopping, thinking, speaking to each other, I think, amongst us lot, and the candidates have on the whole been okay. Attendance has been pretty much 100%, because you're right, you know, from a location perspective, it's been better. You know, and that side of things, the expenses for clients and stuff actually has been less. It could, you know, it should be good for reaching people in different locations that we might not have done before. So yeah, they're probably the key things that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, graduates always need to be prepared when they go for interviews and assessment centres. I guess it's kind of an increased level of communication. They're just glad to hear anything rather than complete silence. So it's very important for that candidate experience that the communication is regular, and they feel involved. They feel part of the process. So that candidate experience has come up, you know, time in, time out, as being one of the most important things, especially getting feedback at the end of the process. So this gives an opportunity to engage early with people and keep them in the loop a lot longer. I think there's some of this will continue as we move forward. And Danielle, you've said that quite a few of your clients already interview people remotely, so perhaps you've been having the same kind of conversations with your candidates, or has it been any different for you?
Yeah, for the candidates going forward for some industries, it's been sort of as normal with those processes, but I think it's a different question when you look at sort of the wider market and how graduates are approaching it. Since I've been back over the last 6 weeks, I've definitely seen a really big increase in sort of candidates, or the number of candidates applying for one job. And right. You know, coming out of university is daunting for anybody. I graduated in 2009. I know what it's like coming out when you're not sure about the market and how stable it is. But one of the big things I've seen is just graduates kind of feeling like they don't know where to turn a little bit. So, you know, they might be applying for 2 or 3 times the normal amount of jobs that they would normally go for. Because then, you know, their first choice of industry may have taken a really big hit, or they're sending out lots of applications and not hearing back, which is, you know, it makes you worry, doesn't it? If you don't hear back, you think, well, why is my CV not good enough? You know, have I not got what, you know, the prerequisites for this industry? So I think engaging graduates and keeping them sort of motivated and upbeat with their job search, I think is really, really important for anybody that has an impact in graduate recruitment. You know, they are young, they're looking to start their career, and it's a hard time. And I think one of the key things I've been doing a lot of with graduates over the last few weeks is just reassuring them that they do have a brilliant background, they've got brilliant experiences, and they just have to persevere with their job search, because they will get a job and things will turn around, and they will be okay. But they have to just keep going and applying for as many things that are suitable for them. Another thing I've sort of noticed as well, and I think this is very indicative of the market, is graduates sort of applying for things that perhaps they don't necessarily want to go into, but it's more of a backup, and you know, they're kind of, again, I think, unsure of where to turn and what to do in this situation. But I'm sure, as with all my other colleagues, and you know, we're advising graduates to look at different options and search for jobs in different places, and just making sure that they are super prepared for any interviews they do have, because every interview is an opportunity, whether that's a temporary job, permanent job, your dream job, or you know, a backup sort of industry. So I think that's really, really important for us at the moment. And again, that kind of correlates with this new digital world and digital interviews. But I think once graduates have done an online assessment once or twice, they're used to, you know, it's not new to them. They're ready to go and ready to sort of approach it in the best way possible. So yeah, I think it's daunting, and there's a lot of unknown, but I think, yeah, we just have to keep supporting graduates and help them to help themselves do the best they can do during interviews.
You know, and companies that do go that extra mile will be remembered by graduates, and that's always a positive piece of marketing. You know, how they were handled by a recruiter during a recession. So it's good to hear that we're able to speak to people over the phone and give them reassurance and prepare them for work, essentially. Owen, how's it been with your candidates? Anything different? Anything the same?
I'd say slightly. As a recruiter into sales jobs, it's not one of those industries or job roles where you can just sort of dip in and consider it amongst lots of other different types of roles. Sales is a tough career. You have to be fairly committed. And, you know, pre-COVID, we'd find it hard enough to find that small pocket of graduates who really want to get into a sales target-driven kind of role. It's not the sort of thing you look at or that obviously stands out when you go to university. So when I've had, you know, I've had 10-fold increases in terms of applications. One of our roles got 340 applications in 3 days. It's one vacancy. We normally send 6 people over for that job. And actually, when I'm speaking to candidates who clearly do not want that kind of role, I'm saying to them, well, don't apply. You're wasting your own time. You're better off to focus on a select bunch of roles that you know you want to do, or you know you would consider strongly, and put more effort into those than waste your time with just multiple clicks on a job board. So I've done a slightly different view to Danielle there. Look, I massively empathise with the 2020 cohort. You know, you've got they've finished their degree in a very weird way. They haven't had the chance to have their graduation ceremonies or see their friends for that final beer after they've done their dissertation, and they've come onto a job market which is you know, frankly bloody hard. What they're also up against, of course, is graduates from 2018 and 2019 who have potentially been let go from their jobs and will now consider an entry-level position to get themselves just employed again. So it's going to be tough for them in certain sectors. I think for the next 3 or 4 months until we get a level out, until those 2018, 2019 graduates get themselves sorted and leaving more opportunity for the 2020 cohort. I can see it being a fairly tough sort of 5 or 6 months ahead. Certainly if they haven't had internships or work experience already. You know, if we're talking about companies onboarding people digitally at graduate level, but they take on a graduate who's already got some experience or an internship, they'll feel much less risk in taking that chance. So it's been a tough, especially looking at graduate sales jobs, it has been a very tough few weeks for people looking at those roles. I have to say, I've seen some incredible applications. Really amazing candidates who are applying for jobs they perhaps wouldn't have before. So it is a buyer's market at the moment, of course. Those people that maybe last year would have potentially turned their nose up at certain jobs would certainly be more open. So there's some amazing talent out there. once businesses open up and start taking a chance on people, they're going to find there's some real high quality talent out there to pick from. I think that's kind of rapid. We've always talked about digital dates already. Yeah, I think it's just going to be a pretty tough few weeks and months ahead. Again, I've tended to go down the line of not being too, try not to be patronising and say, kind of there, it's all going to be great. I've actually took the line of, well, look, here's the reality. This is how it's looking. Because of that, you might want to do a bit more, in terms of your cover letters, or a bit more prep when it comes to interviews, to give yourself that better shot if you get the opportunity to have an interview in the first place.
Yeah. That interesting perspectives from all of you there about your dealings with candidates at various different stages. Of course, our talent pipeline has grown massively, and also the quality as well. So, graduates are coming out of university, as you say, Owen, in an unusual way, but they're also joining 500,000 other graduates, let alone the graduates from 2-3 years even. It's very, very, very hard. So certainly career services are going the extra mile, and they're starting to offer virtual career fairs. And I've just noticed a few questions coming in about virtual career fairs and how students are going to respond to that. We'll try and address those in the questions segment at the end. I'd just like to finish off with one final question to our panel. If you can be brief, just to give any kind of projection about how you see the next few months, because obviously graduate recruitment is cyclical, and right now we're usually entering a busy period, and we've got you back in the office. Clients are looking for graduates. Do you think it's going to continue, and for how long? What are your feelings about how the market is panning out for the next few months or so? Jenny?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think that seasonal element of it is quite pressing at the moment. I've had some clients say, do we need to actually be so seasonal this year? I definitely predict, I think the attraction season is probably going to be at the later stages than usual, where everyone kind of sometimes, the big ones would go maybe even end of August, but mostly kind of early September. I definitely predict that a lot of the attraction stuff's going to end up being closer to end of September, right, even starting October time. So I can see things kind of pushing back quite a bit with the actual campaigns. I was going to say about the virtual fairs, I can empathize with absolutely everyone here. I think everyone is just super hesitant about what does that look like and how's that going to kind of piece out. So I think for me, that prediction at the moment is attraction will be later, which to be honest is going to push everything later. But I wouldn't be surprised if everyone is in the same situation and probably does that same, kind of thing together, just because of timing. I think you're right. We're trying to, cram in doing all this onboarding and actually getting them started, and some still are finishing assessment centres. So, yeah, I think that's kind of my main prediction, is just stuff being a bit later.
Thanks, Jenny. Danielle, what's your take on how it's looking in the next few months for you?
Yeah, again, really good question. I think there is a difference definitely in the companies that perhaps take on a number of graduates into a graduate scheme, and that's very seasonal, start in September, and sort of traditional way of looking at graduate recruitment. And I think what Jenny said sort of echoes perhaps slightly more for those big recruiters. I think on the other side of the coin, you have the SMEs, the startups, who take graduates into entry-level roles, not schemes. And I think for them, it's really a question of consolidation versus growth. And to even be in that situation, to ask those questions right now is good for that business. I think companies are going to be cautious, and I think when their suppliers are looking for more business, they will naturally start looking for graduates, because that need only arises at that particular time when the work is there. So yeah, I think it's going to it's going to continue slow. The growth will be slow, but I definitely see a high volume of recruitment coming in for those SMEs, yeah, as the market picks up generally. But it is definitely going to be a lot more cautious than it perhaps was before 2020.
Sure. So maybe just-in-time recruitment.
Exactly.
On demand. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And Owen, I mean, you've already talked a little bit about how your clients have been recruiting through this time and how it's been for graduates. Do you see that continuing now for the next 3 months, or is it going to go up? Is it going to stay the same?
Reaching out to businesses over the course of April to June, we did get a lot of call us in September. No, let's wait till we're back in offices.
Right.
Obviously, with the schools going back, that forces the hand of a lot of staff to go back to offices anyway. So I think there will be certainly another little jump around then. For some context, I was looking at some stuff, and if our jobs that we get in as a business reflect the job market out there for graduates, I mean, we've gone from having around, back in April, I think we had about 20% of the amount of business we normally have. Looking at July's new jobs, there's about 33 to 40% of the business we normally have. So, you know, obviously still not great. We want to have what we had back in February, don't we? If we're almost talking, I think, almost doubling in the new roles we've had between April and July. So if that continues, even if it's slow and steady, that's obviously going to be a great thing.
Okay, Owen, you're breaking up a little bit there, but
I'm finished.
But yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for our panelists to just share some of the insights they've had with their clients, their candidates, and how they see the next 3 to 4 months panning out. This has been recorded, so you will be able to play this back on our YouTube channel, which you'll get a link to at the end. Now, we haven't got too much time for questions. We've had a few through, and Jenny, I noticed, has been answering some of your questions, but there seems to be a common thread generally on the line of the virtual piece. One question in particular was about virtual career fairs and whether students will respond well to this, which I think they will. The demand is there. If they are comfortable with the technology, which most of them have been on these kind of platforms, I think that will continue. I mean, that's the next big thing in our season is going to career fairs usually. We've got to decide as an organisation whether we go along to virtual career fairs, and we're currently talking with universities at the moment about what they can offer. One person has said that it's important that universities don't try and replicate a live event like a digital event. Taking the format of a fair and putting it online doesn't work. So I guess it comes down to the platform that they use, because there are some that are absolutely perfect for running a virtual careers fair. They have booths, they have queuing systems, they have breakout areas. There's some really sophisticated platforms out there. So in answer to that particular question, I think that the demand is there. Their success will largely depend on the nature of that platform and how those clients have been able to engage with those students and graduates, if they've had decent conversations, and ultimately if they've managed to recruit anyone. But this is hitting the university sector in a massive way this season. So virtual career fairs have to watch this space. As they unfold, we will share with our members what other recruiters have found are good or not so good. So we will report back on that. Unfortunately, we don't have much time for the other questions. However, we will continue this conversation on the LinkedIn forum. So Graduate Recruiters Network have a LinkedIn group. Over 2,776 members are on there. We'll be posting this after the event, so you can speak to our panelists, ask any questions in your own time. So all that remains for me to say is thank you very much to our panelists, Jenny, Danielle and Owen. Thank you for giving us your time, sharing your insights, and also to our GRN members. We've had about 40 people come along today from different companies, different sectors. I hope you found it useful. So next time we will return after a short break in August on the 9th of September. I'll be interviewing Max Nupfer about artificial intelligence and machine learning. He did a talk for us at a recent event, which was very popular. So he's agreed to come back and give an update about the effects of artificial intelligence and machine learning on recruitment. So that will be our tech masterclass on Wednesday, the 9th of September. Invites will go out nearer the time. So thank you very much. Have a great day and speak to you very, very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.